could remember that they're changing my voice. Everyone take a moment to really resent the American government, the military, the police, and all the groups working on this case that made it so I had to do this introduction part of this video over. And now all the souls outside the divine order will suffer more just so they could do petty stuff like that. So that leads me to what this video is about. This video is about why I have the upper hand, yet they make these psychotic demands while poverty is crushing their countrymen and rotting the souls of the rich intensely, and there's all sorts of other problems as well. Why are they so depraved and so deranged? Well, if you look at the Romans and the Jews, their histories are very similar, right? They both worship Baal, and the Romans worship in the form of Jupiter, the Greeks in the form of Zeus, what have you. That was their main deities, and they were hell-bent to be evil and to do the wrong thing. That is key in the Bible. That's not separate from the Bible. That's how the Jews tell it themselves. Is it anti-Semitic? No. One, it must be true because the history shows us that, and the Jews' own testimony through their religion, which you'd think would be sacred to them. But apparently it's not. They're persecuting me instead of honoring God and I. Okay, so we have no reason to believe that it went any differently than that. And just like the Romans mocked Jesus, the Jews mocked Jesus. On this case, the white Jews and LGBT people, whitewashed people, thugs with no higher cause, they all mock God and I to their extreme disgrace. Pretty straightforward. Nothing racist about it, just what's going on here. I have 23 witnesses. Every day, dozens of them at least are involved. It's open and shut. This is a huge cultural event here in America, and it is a very racist event on their part. The Romans became Western culture, right? White people, whitewashed people, what have you, right? The Roman Catholic Church, and from that came the Protestants, and there's a thin line between a Catholic and a Christian. One of the main differences is a Catholic puts on more of a show, something to this effect. They all are in rebellion, and they're all cheating me out of my right to lead. So let's look at their demands here. Well, first, let's answer the question why. Let's look at Ezekiel 2:3. He said, "Son of man, I am sending you to the Israelites, to a rebellious nation that has rebelled against me. They and their ancestors have been in revolt against me to this very day." So again, who are the Jews, right? Who are the Jews? Who are white people? Who are whitewashed people? How does the prophet Ezekiel describe them then? And as we look at the timeline, we look at the history of confessionalism, we look at the history of Western churches, how people were not persecuted for righteousness there for the most part, and we look at why this is happening. What many people in their own churches say, many Jews themselves agree with me. The Jews who might disagree with me, I go to their YouTube channels ever so often, to their videos, I comment, they're tail tucked. They do not want to discuss it with me. If you're a light to the Gentiles and you think that collectively you're Jesus magically collectively, why are you afraid to discuss it with me? That's not being a light. That's being darkness. And you know them by their works. And of course they want to have a controlled opposition discussion, right? If anything. It's very sick what they're doing, very sick. I'm not complaining that you're not using psychology and making me feel good. I'm complaining that you're not obeying God. Let's get that very clear. So again, Ezekiel 2:3, he said, "Son of man, I'm sending you to the Israelites." Now who are they? To a rebellious nation that has rebelled against me. They and their ancestors have been in revolt against me to this very day. So all the way back to Moses, who wasn't allowed to go to the promised land, okay, in rebellion from the moment they wrote the Old Testament, the Torah, the Tanakh, all the way to the prophet Ezekiel. And as we look at the timeline, we see that all the way through the New Testament, right? They're still in rebellion, okay, around the time of Christ. Moses from 1200 BC all the way to maybe 0 AD, depending on where you put the birth of Christ, the time of Christ, right? 33 AD, whatever, depending on how you count it there. So for 1200 years. Then we look at the history after that, we see no sign that they're doing something profoundly holy and good. Okay? Now, the people in the government didn't stay out of this. Whites, Jews, and LGBT people, whitewashed people in the government, and, thugs for sale came together to persecute me and change my voice and try to mock me. Like when I proved definitively, that I'm the servant of the Lord, I'm Jeshurun, and they are merely trying to overreach. They're merely trying to replace me. They're mere rebels. Just like Ezekiel said. Ezekiel versus the people he sent to. I, the Messiah, versus the Jews and the Gentiles who refuse to obey God through me. And not a single person at this time is obeying God through me. And after my flesh dies, that's it. And that's a very important message from God. The main message is I'm God's son. This is the end. The second most important message, in a sense it's the main message, it depends on how you slice it, what you connect to what, is that people should stop reproducing. After my flesh dies, that's it. They're cut off from God. Done. So now let's see, what are their demands? I got 15 demands that they make all the time in various ways. Point number 1. They want LGBT sex, psychology, and erotic desire to be all that occurs when people have sex and when they relate to each other, what have you. It is insane that even though I am not going to be having any children, they insist that I come into their psychotic and disgusting sexual spirits. And quite often they change my voice, right? They cause me to sound gay in some videos, crazy, weird, bipolar. When I say the word sex, quite often they try to make it so I sound like some kind of gender-neutral homosexual trying to sound sexy or something. Very immature, what they're doing. Very immature. They're frat people. Look at how many frats and Freemasons there are. How many military people are hazing people. There's a lot of immature people in this country. And they're the ones who have all the money, so to speak, just very immature. Look at Bezos and Musk and Arnault and the faces they make. Look at how people think of themselves as witches, like the Mars family and the Sacklers and so on and so forth. They act, look at their pictures. Look up who these rich people are. Ask yourselves, are they a psychopath? Are they a weirdo? Or are they both? And then ask yourself, do you think that I'm magically mistaken here? Point number 2. They want me to be gay or to pretend to be gay so they can feel like they have sexually conquered the world, etc. Very sick, right? Very sick. When you're a sane person and you think about their demands, okay, you hate them even more. And I'm not saying you should or shouldn't hate them for the purpose of the rules on YouTube, but that's the fact. That's the fact of the matter. And if the people on YouTube think that I shouldn't make this video, don't you think they shouldn't persecute me and make these demands? You think you should cover up when someone's being abused, when they're using technology to try to make them gay and all this horrible stuff and fuming and poisoning them and trying to coerce them and threatening them and their family? Okay. Point number 3. They want me to pretend that whites, Jews, and LGBT people are magically chosen. Point number 4. They do not want me to talk about Gaza. Point number 5. They do not want me to criticize the military, police, or the intelligence community. Point number 6. They do not want me to criticize or insult the Freemasons. Point number 7. They want me to be less and to insult myself in an attempt to wage war against God or to try to belittle God or mock God, what have you, which I would never do. God is the greatest, the one true God, not the God of the churches. That's Lucifer. The mosques, synagogues, they follow Lucifer. And I have a religious right to make that argument because these religions aren't compatible. And it's very central to the freedom of religion, when it comes to my right to, it's very central when it comes to the freedom of religion. Okay. The ideas that I'm talking about are very central. My right to say I'm right and the Jews and the Christians and the Muslims are wrong. That is very central. That's a huge part of the Bible. It's part of the Torah and the Quran. Very central. Okay. So God is almighty. I would die for God at the drop of a hat. Point number 8. They do not want me to effectively expose the corporate gimmicks in politics that are keeping people from their rights, from food, from housing, from healthcare, etc. 60,000 people are said to die every year from a lack of adequate access to healthcare, 50,000 from suicides, in America alone, mind you, and 100,000 from drug overdoses, not to mention 9 million people die every year in the world from starvation and hunger-related issues. But they don't want me to talk effectively about the root causes and to be honest and to try to actually solve it. I mean, they're psychotic. They are sick people, deranged, very depraved people. Point number 9. They want to be able to sexually assault me with impunity. And they want me to kind of play along with it, what have you. Very sick people, very sick people. They want me to play stupid about them changing the way I look and sound and trying to make it so I have gay mannerisms, etc. Now keep in mind, these are the types of people who are lying to people who argue that Jesus in the story was sexually assaulted by the Romans. They say, what your history book doesn't teach you. And I've seen that meme or whatever. They depict the gender-neutral Baphomet biting off Jesus' head, the false image of Christ, but it's aimed at me, no matter how you slice it. Point number 11. They want me to help them try to make whites, Jews, and LGBT people seem superior. Point number 12. They want to try to put their demonic spirits above God, using me, which will never happen. Point number 13. They want to channel demons and to abuse me in the spirit of those demons, which is not thinking straight, so by default it is gay and childish. It is worthless, nerdy, stupid, pointless, foolish, contemptible, and childish, to name a few. The demonic spirits are pathetic. Point number 14. So it turns out I actually have 17 points here. They want to make it so their demonic spirits are speaking instead of me, but by me pointing this out, God is the one being heard, and not their demonic Western LGBT and Jewish spirits, etc. This is true as people hear what is being said from God and not the demonic distractions that are trying to superimpose their agenda on God's. In other words, if someone told you that your house is on fire because God commanded them to, and they changes their voice to make them sound like a gay Satanist, who's being heard? It's still God being heard. It's just some worms acting like some kind of detour bitch, some kind of weirdo who is trying to play you out, right? He's trying to play that person out. And you should hate those people for doing that. There's no other way to look at it. If they don't want to be hated as these particular racist LGBT people, particular rich racist whites and Jews, okay, then they shouldn't do something that would make a righteous person hate them with all their heart. It reminds me of Ron Isley in that song, it's called Contagious or something, where he says what he saw was enough to drive a preacher wild. If you don't want to be hated, don't do things that are enough to drive the most righteous person that goes beyond every preacher there ever was wild. Pretty straightforward. Who could say that I'm wrong? Obviously I'm right. This is true as people hear what is being said from God and not the demonic distractions. Again, they are trying to superimpose their agenda on God's agenda, but only a dumbass would get that from my videos in terms of, what they're hearing, what is being communicated to them. I'm communicating to them what God wants them to hear, okay, and I'm explaining that they're changing the sound of my voice and speech patterns, etc. Pretty straightforward. They wasted a lot of time, a lot of money. I outmaneuver these racist whites, Jews, and LGBT people, these governing class people with ease. I give them a falcon, trample, and they're stomped into next week, period. Point number 15. They want me to play the devil's mage gay game. Okay, so the word mage is a play on words for game, and image is I mage, right? It's a word play. They want me to play that stupid game and their stupid channel spirits game and to come into their culture. They have failed horribly. I told them many times that it would not work. Point number 16. They want to waste my time and everyone else's as they are some kind of drama queens, weirdos, jealous bastards, rock star-like idiots, rock fan loser types, occult sissies, mentally ill Jews, and Nordic types. Okay. So, matter of fact, I'm just going to add another point here. So, altogether, it's going to be 18 here. So, point number 17. And I kind of made this pretty quickly, but it's right on. It's spot on. And there's more stuff than this going on. But this gives you a good feel for what's going on here. Point number 17 is what we're on, right? So, okay, they're sadistic, and they want a Luciferian atmosphere of evil and hopelessness. They want pockets of these fairy-like people, right? Think about woke and MAGA. They're kind of fairy-like-ish, okay? And whatever other groups out there. Now think about the Pope. Clear-cut fairy look. Clear-cut. Justin Bieber types, fairy, right? The rapper 6ix9ine and so on and so forth. There's a bunch of fairy kind of surrealism, Power Ranger-like, My Little Pony-like people, like the depictions of angels in the churches, and they want them to go, yay, and try to, take on these other guys who they're pretending are the only problems, but they're all the problem. Anyone who cheats me out of my right to lead is a problem. Think of life as an intelligence test, and anyone who's stupid enough to come into one of their compartments fails. They're an idiot. They're a failure. Done. Point number 18. They are inbred and or mildly or severely retarded. And they're trying to get a kick out of those mind states. And they want me to help them try to come up with ways to do so. They are very sick and deranged people. You know, those mind states in terms of a sadistic, mildly to severely retarded, inbred person's mind state. Thank you.